Hey everyone, welcome to today's edition of One Single Story. It is, I think Thursday. I'm going to mess this up if I ain't careful, but I think we're on Thursday's reading,
right.
and we're looking at Ezra 7. So we're in the book of Ezra. The topic is restoration this week, and that's the theme of the book. And we're looking at Ezra 7, and it begins by saying that many years later, during the reign of King Artaxerxes of Persia, there was a man named Ezra. He was the son of Sariah, son of Azariah, son of Hilkiah, son of Shallum, son of Zadok, son of Ahitub, son of Amariah, son of Azariah, son of Merathoth, son of Zerariah, son of Uzzi, son of Bucky, I don't know.
Bucky.
He was from the South.
Yeah, I was going to say, I never knew that was a
Uncle
biblical
Bucky.
name.
I know, right? Son of Abishua, son of Phinehas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron the high priest. So we get the lineage of how he became a priest. It says this Ezra was a scribe who was well versed in the law of Moses. And verse 8 says Ezra arrived in Jerusalem in August of that year. He had arranged to leave Babylon on April 8th, the first day of the new year, and he arrived in Jerusalem on August the 4th, for the gracious hand of God was on him. This was because Ezra had determined to study and obey the law of the Lord and to teach those decrees and regulations to the people of Israel. So the people have already gotten back. They're there, and Ezra seems to be coming later. So if he's the writer of the book of Ezra, some of this he's recording historically, or he's recording one from Babylon. We not sure which. I can't speak to that off the top of my head. But there are some people who have not made that trek yet. They have not moved from Babylon to Jerusalem. And some of them by choice, apparently. Ezra had to have been by choice because he doesn't seem to have any problem verifying that he's a Jew. I think that was the key. You had to verify you were a Jew. But some of them are struggling to be brought back. And it's weird. You would have thought that when there was this exodus, if you will, from Babylon to Jerusalem, that all of them would have went. And the thing that struck me, and the question that I kind of want to talk about, is it seems that in life, some restoration is almost instantaneous. Like it's not a twinkle your nose thing most of the time, but it happens so quickly.
Quicker process.
Mm-hmm. And then for others, it seems to take long periods of time, and it never quite seems to be perfect. Mm-hmm. Why is there a difference? Why are some people restored immediately for the same things or even worse things, and why does it take time for other people? What factors play into that, maybe?
One of my takes on that question specific in this story is, in my mind, had they all been released simultaneously and they'd come back at the same time, I think the overwhelming logistics of having to deal with the sheer numbers of people and all the issues, because there was a lack of housing, you got to have some governmental structure in place. I think all of that would have been a deterrent and a detriment, and would have slowed down the process of building the temple, which the spiritual aspect needed to get in order first. And it's hard for us to understand and comprehend when we're that person wanting deliverance and restoration. We want it immediately. Mm-hmm. But sometimes, and I can, again, speak from personal experience, what seemed to be a delay or even a denial initially in what I thought needed to be restoration in a particular area was actually God's grace causing me to grow and develop to the point that once I got restoration in that area, then I would be able to deal with it and handle it. Whether if it had been immediately, I probably wouldn't have learned the lessons that I needed to learn if it had been just handed off to me.
Yeah. That was pretty much what I was going to say. With the instantaneous one, God
All right,
knows.
then we'll just go.
Okay.
Yeah. Next question.
We'll just ditto.
I'm just messing with you. Go ahead.
No, I mean that's human nature two ways here. We want things quick, but usually when we get things quick, we don't learn the lesson in it. We don't have that value in it, and unfortunately, the things that we learn that stick with us the most usually take a little bit longer, or they're painful, or both. But God also knows that we need something like an adrenaline shot into our morale. So sometimes He'll be able to restore something quickly for us to keep us encouraged and stuff. But there might be other things that we need as an individual a little bit longer time to learn. But we might be not being fully restored because it might be in a mix of other people as well. And God being the master weaver, He still needs to work through these other people if that restoration has to do with a group of people.
Yeah, I observe a couple of different things that happens in the restoration process. Sometimes I literally believe people are forgotten, especially in the world that we live in today. Meaning, if you, I will hear people in prominent places say, if something bad happens in your life, just give it 48 hours. Something worse is going to be happening somewhere else, and people will forget about you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the context, even in the context of church, sometimes tragic things happen. I can even think, I saw this in my own life, but I, in more recent years, have talked through this with other people where significant issues had happened in their life. And immediately people ask about it. But as space got between it, 90 days, 6 months, a year, people had their own problems, or there were bigger issues, or it on the outside it looked fine, and nobody talked about it anymore. Some of it is personality driven. You and I've had this conversation privately, never on air, but I think my personality benefited me in my restoration
certainly.
process, at least in what I was able to do, because okay, just suck it up and move on. And some people are different. Some people would wear the shame and never be able to escape from it. There are other people on the other side that I think are drama mamas, like they just love it. They're going to keep. If you forget about this, they're going to. I'm going to come up with. Yeah, that's right. They're going to talk about it.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, we know it happened 25 years ago, but it's fresh to me. Let's talk about it. I don't want you to forget it. I think it's often personality driven. The people that recover and are able to deal with certain things, it looks different. And the thing that we can't forget is God's timing in the whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you just can't forget God's timing. There's no way that you can remove the hand of God, if it's true restoration, from how He wants to see things play out.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of that timing of God, when you read this entire chapter in His story, is there's a purpose for those people groups that do return, in building the altar first, and then as they took process in starting to build the temple. It wasn't that He just brought the whole group back and everybody else standing around twiddling their thumbs. There was a process. And I think I know we don't always understand God's timing of the process of how He chooses to use restored people or even groups of people, because it's part of His plan to ultimately bless a larger group of people. And if that gets out of order, then everything is out of order.
Yeah, and we live in an unusual time. I can't say what he did because everybody would figure it out. I mean, it don't matter. It's not a spiritual thing, but they're a public figure. They said something publicly recently that caused some of their work to be canceled. And whether it was right or wrong, that's the age we live in. Like, this is this immediate for certain things.
Certain things.
Yeah, for certain things. If you cross this line, for other things, there's lots of grace, and we're going to ignore this. And I saw one particular post from a person who they said good riddance, and they named the person's name. It was somebody I know. Not the person that committed. I don't know them, but the person that made this post. And I wanted to respond publicly to them. I didn't. Privately, I did. I said, "What happened to tolerance? Right? You can't tell me over here like we're going to tolerate this from some people, this behavior. Yeah, but that's just not acceptable. There are some behaviors that I think are unacceptable. So do I get to choose? Do I get to make that, that call? We live in this really strange, and if you cross certain lines in this culture, you are done, never to recover again. Like there is no hope for you. None. Zero. And it's extremely unfortunate that we live in that time where I think that on the opposite side of that, I think there are people who cannot be restored because somebody has their foot on their neck. That's how I would describe it.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Why is that? Why do we want to keep people down?
If it's not our struggle, our failure, our issue, the natural tendency is that's such a big deal, therefore I judge that. If they struggled in the same areas or had similar failures or issues, then it's different, and I think that's a big part of it because it's not mine. I don't identify with it. I'm probably never going to be involved in that. Therefore, I stand in judgment when the reality is for every one thing that they've identified and labeled because it's not theirs, you could probably find 2 or 3 of their own if they were honest with themselves.
I think a lot of times some people take it upon themselves to think that there hasn't been enough punishment, enough pain, especially if somebody in a restoration position is moving on to a place where they can impact people and stuff, and whether the person has a personal connection with the pain or just simply a self-righteous or prideful attitude, they want to keep holding that over the person as though they have control on it. And sometimes those people think that they're doing right by God, doing that. And it's, to a certain extent, we all have to be held accountable, but healthy tolerance and a balance of grace and truth need to be in there in the restoration. So.
Yeah. And, there may be a reason why they can't be restored to something specific. There may be that, we could have debates about, earlier this week, you talked about divorce and remarriage. We could have a debate about that, and if that's your position, take it, we're not going to resolve it, but there are some other times that it's like a no-go. Okay. So let's say you you've been convicted of some child sex crime. Okay. You can come to church here. They do. Whether we like it or not, I was having a conversation the other day with somebody in authority about that particular issue. They were like, they're everywhere. Like you just don't know how many there are. They're everywhere. We know, but you don't. But can they work in children? No. If they were a children's pastor, will they ever be a children's pastor again? The answer is never.
Unequivocally no.
Right. That's a no. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's a never. That you don't. That doesn't have to be a part of the restoration plan. That's a different. Sometimes there are things that disqualify you from being able to do things. If you chop your right arm off, you're not going to be a right-handed pitcher again.
Probably not.
It's going to be very difficult. And but spiritually restoring people into the faith helping them thrive, finding another seat on the
Yeah.
bus where they can,
Yep.
work in the kingdom of God. That's different than, okay, restoration is not always its original use.
Yeah, it doesn't always look the same.
That's right. I'll give you an
It's not automatic reset to where you were, what you were doing.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example right now of something physical. So years ago, my grandmother, before she died, gave me a piano that she had in her house. It ain't no expensive piano. And, you could buy pianos for $25 that are extremely ornate, beautiful pianos, woodwork. This one's not. Like, this is just old, cheap, squared wood. It's not anything fancy. Some of the ivory was broken off of it. The soundboard was probably warped a long time ago. No matter how you tried to tune it, there wasn't much you could do about it. So I have turned recently that piano over to a company, and they're turning it into a desk for me. Now it will look like a piano, but it'll never function as a piano again. I wanted to keep it as a part of my life because it was my grandmother's, that it meant something to me. But its days of being useful as a piano were gone probably when I got it. That was probably the truth of it. But it doesn't mean it can't be useful. Sometimes you have to be creative. Sometimes you got to invest something, which I'm happy to do. But it'll be useful for generations, hopefully after me, to be able to remember. And one of the mistakes I think we make is it was A, so it's got to be A again, and that's what restoration.
Or nothing else.
That's right. That's what
Yeah.
restoration looks like, and that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah. And we end up having HGTV on the house a lot. I think they call that repurposing. Yeah, I think restoration can easily be that. We can be
Circular
repurposed.
economy is circular economy is the new word. I learned that word this week. So apparently, all of these remote tech workers out in Silicon Valley now, nobody's working, so they got all of this, like hundreds of millions of dollars of incredible office furniture, like desk, fancy chairs, massage chairs, nap pods, and that is like becoming this fast industry out there where these people are taking it and reselling it for these companies, and they call it the circular economy. So it was made over here, it was sold for one purpose, and now it's making its way around. So sometimes restoration's a circular
economy.
Yeah, that's right. Anything else y'all wanted to add about this passage?
Just for me, one of the significant things in here talks about the king gave Ezra everything he asked for, and then over in verse 10 it says, because he determined one to study and obey the law of the Lord and teach those decrees and regulations to the people, that he had this kind of blessing and favor and help lead in the restoration. And I think that's extremely significant that we study, we know, we obey, and then we teach God's principles.
And what I want to say about that is that call on his life. The passage I read at the beginning of this gave his lineage. It started with Aaron years before he was
generations
doing it.
before.
The path had been set for him to be able to do
Absolutely.
that. Yeah. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you'll be back tomorrow as we finish up our conversation about Ezra.